Do you ever just want to feel like someone has picked up your heart and just ripped it out of your chest, and then after a little while decided to put it back in and just fucking twist it? Yes? Damn, I thought you would have said no. Well, in that case, welcome to one of the best visual novel games I've ever played. Until Then. A story-rich game where choices matter. Not really, but I thought it sounded cool. I wrote it in a script and I kept it in, so sorry. It's set in kind of like a high school setting based on Metro Manila. I'm going to butcher the pronunciations of these. Just forgive me, I'll put it on the screen. Metro Manila, Philippines. Drawing inspiration from real-world Filipino culture, landscapes, and daily high school life. A beautiful game which covers loss, grief, acceptance, letting go, forgiveness, and many, many more life-changing topics which will have you in tears. Probably at least 80% of you. The game was developed by the independent studio Polychroma Games. The team is based in the Philippines and spent about 4 years creating the game. And recently I have just finished the DLC that came out and the quality did not drop off. It stayed true to the original and added many more layers to the character's story. One of the first things that immediately stood out to me was the art style. When someone tells you pixel art, you probably picture an indie game trying to cash in on nostalgia, but Until Then isn't trying to remind you of the past. It creates something that feels completely fresh. Every single location is packed with detail. Whether you're sitting in the classroom trying to survive another lesson, walking through the busy streets of Metro Manila, hopping on a train, or just grabbing food with friends, everything feels alive. NPCs aren't just stood there like cardboard cutouts waiting for you to progress the story. They're talking, scrolling on their phones, rushing to work, laughing with friends. It generally feels like a real place instead of a game level. The lighting deserves its own round of applause too. There are moments where absolutely nothing important is happening, but you're literally just walking home after school, but the way the sunset shines through the buildings or rain reflects off the pavement somehow makes it feel comforting. It's weirdly nostalgic, almost like remembering somewhere you've never actually been. And then there are the character animations. They're incredibly subtle, but that's what makes them work so well. A nervous glance away, someone fidgeting while they're talking, a smile disappearing for a split second. These tiny details say so much without a single line of dialogue. It's honestly some of the most expressive pixel art I've seen. But as gorgeous as the game looks, the writing is what completely won me over. One thing I absolutely hate in story-driven games is when every conversation sounds like the writers are desperately trying to create the next inspirational quote for someone's Instagram bio. People don't talk like that. Thankfully, Until Then understands this perfectly. The conversations feel natural. Friends constantly tease each other. They send each other memes, make terrible jokes, interrupt one another, dodge awkward conversations, and occasionally say something surprisingly deep without even meaning to. It never really feels forced. Instead of feeling like you're watching fictional characters deliver dialogue, it feels like you're eavesdropping on actual teenagers just living their lives. And because of that, you slowly become attached without even realizing it. At first, I was interested where the story was going. A few hours later, I wasn't thinking about the plot anymore. I was just hoping everyone would be okay. That's when I realized the game had completely got me. It had me in its grips. One thing I know might put some people off is the slower pacing. This isn't a game that's throwing plot twists at you every 10 minutes. Sometimes you're just replying to messages, scrolling social media, taking photos, riding the train home, or hanging out after school. Normally, I'd be the first person to complain, right? Can something actually fucking happen now? But that's exactly why the emotional moments work so well. The game lets you exist alongside these characters before asking you to care about them. It earns your emotions instead of demanding them. The phone mechanics are a perfect example of this. At first I thought, oh cool, another fake phone in a video game. But it ends up becoming one of the best ways the game builds its world. Reading group chats, seeing random posts, reacting to photos, and watching conversations naturally continue outside of cutscenes makes everything feel incredibly believable. It doesn't feel like a gimmick, it feels like how teenagers actually communicate. And then there's the soundtrack. I honestly don't think people talk about it enough. The music never tries to overpower a scene. Sometimes it's nothing more than a soft piano melody sitting quietly in the background, and other times it almost disappears completely. That restraint is exactly what makes the emotional moments hit like a freight train. The game trusts its writing enough to know that it doesn't need loud orchestras screaming at you, telling you, oh look, it's time to cry now. Speaking of crying, this game deals with some incredibly heavy themes, such as loss, grief, moving on, forgiveness, regret, growing up, accepting change. But it never feels preachy, it never pauses the story to deliver some life lesson. Instead, it lets these themes naturally grow through its characters and their relationships. And I think that's why so many people connected with it, including myself. Even though the game is deeply rooted in Filipino culture, which by the way was fascinating to experience, it tells a story that's completely universal. You don't need to have grown up in Metro Manila to understand what it's like to lose someone, to drift away from friends, to wonder if you're making the right decisions, to wish you could go back and change something. Those feelings exist everywhere. I also have to give a huge amount of credit to Polychroma Games. This was a team that spent around 4 years creating Until Then, and honestly, that passion shines through every single hour of the experience. Nothing feels rushed, nothing feels like filler, everything has a purpose. And after finishing the main game, I jumped straight into the recently released DLC because honestly, I wasn't ready to leave these characters behind just yet. Thankfully, the DLC doesn't feel like content that was chopped out of the original game to sell later. It expands the characters naturally, answers questions I didn't even realize I had, and somehow manages to keep the same emotional quality all the way through. That's incredibly difficult to do. So many games have brilliant endings and then release DLC that feels completely unnecessary and like a money grab. Until Then somehow manages to make its world feel even richer. By the time the credits rolled, I generally just sat there staring at my monitor for a few minutes. I wasn't reaching for another game. I wasn't checking my phone. I just needed a minute. Because every now and then, a game comes along that reminds you why stories matter. Not because they're full of explosions or giant plot twists, but because they make fictional people feel real enough that saying goodbye actually hurts. And Until Then absolutely does that. So yeah, with all that said, I personally believe you should experience this game at least once in your life. Do let me know if you have played this game before, or if you're planning to. I tried hard not to really spoil anything of the story, but that's almost kind of impossible. You know, I did try my best. I hope I didn't spoil a lot. So, just adding this little section here to talk about some extra bits, more of an information section. Until Then sits at around 20 hours of gameplay for the main game, but this also kind of depends how quick you read. I myself have got 30 hours with just one playthrough, and that's including the DLC. But with the DLC, you should probably get 20 to 25 hours of pure gameplay. I'm slow at reading, so yeah. It also supports controllers, mouse and keyboard as well, surprisingly. But yes, both supported, and even Steam Deck verified for my fellow Steam Deck users, which means you can go cry on the sofa with your family nearby and get made fun of. Lol. It also only costs about £16.75. That's just for the base game, but there's a bundle going on right now with the deluxe edition for £16.83. So yeah, you have no excuse. I mean, you could wait for this next sale, but you know, no excuse. But yeah, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, whatever you think the video is worth, and I'll see you next time. Peace. Boom. Boom.